Hello, and welcome back to Philosophical Conversations. I am Giorgi Khuroshvili. We are in the country of Georgia at New Georgian University. And today we are discussing transformation of world order and international politics since the collapse of the Soviet Union. Few arguments about the shape of the post-Cold War international system have met with as much patience and debate as the one articulated in Samuel Huntington's book, The Clash of Civilizations and Remaking of the World Order. His core argument was that the future conflicts would be shaped by cultural and civilizational differences. I'm very pleased to be joined in this conversation by Denis Sammut. Mr. Sammut is a leading analyst of the foreign policy. He is specialized in Caucasus region. He gained his MA from the University of London and PhD from the University of Oxford. Currently, he is leading London-based organization Links. Mr. Sammut, thanks for joining. Let me ask my first question. Have events since Huntington's book, Clash of Civilizations, was written, like 9/11, have bear out or contradicted his thesis?
Well, if you look at the issue from a simplistic perspective, you can say, yes, of course, 9/11 and things that followed on from 9/11 have proven that Huntington was right. There is a clash between Islam and the Christian world. However, it is, in fact, a much more complicated issue. Huntington started putting forward these ideas on the Clash of Civilization in 1992, when the world was in a big euphoria after the collapse of the Soviet Union, and thought that the transition away from the Cold War period was going to be very simple and very easy, and that would then subsequently be replaced by a different type of confrontation, the confrontation between cultures. In fact, what happened was that the development, the transition has taken much longer than was anticipated. In fact, in some ways it hasn't even finished yet 25 years later. And so what we have is a situation where Russia remains a power that has imperial instincts, and this creates a lot of tensions on Russia's borders to the west with Europe, to the south with the Caucasus and elsewhere. We also have a situation where the biggest problems, the biggest clashes going on in the world at the moment are not between Islam and Christianity. They are within Islam itself, between different strands of Islam, between Shias and Sunnis. And we can see this being played out in Syria in the most horrific way possible. So I think that Huntington was making a point. He was actually making a question. We sometimes forget that he put a question mark after the term Clash of Civilizations, because he himself wanted to challenge intellectuals with this idea. And I think it was a useful thing to do. I remember as a student discussing Huntington's ideas just as they were being made popular and published worldwide. So it is a valid argument, it is a valid question, but I don't think that events have actually proven that it is the case. And there are also some practical issues. For example, this supposed clash of civilizations does not reflect itself sometimes in international politics. We have seen the Vatican and conservative Arab states and Muslim states cooperating together in the United Nations when it comes to some social issues and when it comes to, for example, women issues. They have found a common agenda. So I don't think it is possible to say that there is, at the moment, a clash of civilization. There are problems, but a clash of civilization is something on a much wider scale that I don't think exists.
How should we go about explaining terrorism, and especially the form of terrorism we are facing today?
I think, first of all, we need to be clear that terrorism is actually violent criminality. The term terrorism brings with it some connotations of it being part of some political mission, when in fact it is not. It is being used by a very, very small group of people who have tried to hijack the idea of Islam and to turn this idea into a violent action to bring about some sort of reaction. It's not even clear what kind of reaction they are trying to get from this violent act, these violent acts. So I think we need, first of all, to redefine what is happening, the incidents happening on the streets of Europe and in other places, not only Europe, by the way, in Turkey and even in places like Pakistan and Muslim countries themselves. It is not right to try to legitimize these sections. Anything that involves the mass killing of civilians does not have a political agenda. It's not a political act, it's a criminal act. And I think we need to move faster in defining this type of activity as criminal activity.
There is a popular opinion that one of the reasons of radical Islam and terrorism is a lack of education. Do you agree with this opinion?
I think it's a lack of tolerance, and I think it's a lack of a certain amount of knowledge of specific things. But lack of education means that the people did not know how to read or write, or were not educated. We have examples of people, even from my old alma mater, the University of London, who went and joined jihadist movements. So not all people who engage in terrorism are uneducated in that sense. They are uneducated because they probably have not actually understood their own religion. And so they have a simplistic understanding of what their religion is telling them. And if they were to be better educated in that, they would probably find that they are making a big mistake. So there is that. The second element is tolerance. Now, tolerance is something that, yes, it's something that one has to have inside oneself, the ability to be tolerant to others. But I think we need also to educate people on the importance of tolerance, the importance of respecting people who are different from us in any way or other. And I think this is where there is a lack of education. It's not a lack of people knowing how to read or write. It's a lack of understanding important ideas and important values. And yes, I think it is important, it is essential that education institutions throughout the world revisit their curriculum and try to bring in some of these ideas into their own curriculum in order that we make sure that the right messages are being transmitted.
Right. Current international politics has many stakeholders. Along with the traditional positions of United States and Russia, the new stakeholders are emerging like China, India, Iran, and they all do want to have their own part in this world. So, how do you think how West should deal with this interest, and what is the possible way the West can develop its policy, foreign policy in this regard?
I don't see the emergence of new political, economic forces, cultural forces as a threat. I think we need to be looking at the emerging countries as our new partners with who we need to work, with who we need to find common ground, with who we can develop new visions, new perspectives, new ideas to deal with some of the crucial problems facing humankind that cannot be solved by one state or one group of states. People say the West has lost its power. If you look at the military balance, I'm not sure that that is the case already, but possibly it can be that there is more balance now than there used to be, and some countries are able to project the same military power as the United States or Europe or whatever. But there is one area where the West still has superiority, and this is what I call soft power. In the area of soft power, Western countries the European Union countries, the United States, are still the countries that can come up with innovation, with new ideas, with research that is able to develop new skills and new techniques. And despite, the occasional story that we hear of a breakthrough on this or that issue in China or wherever, the mass of the new innovative ideas and technologies are still coming out from Western countries. This is the current strength of the West. This is based on a good education system, on a good system of governance, and on an ability to enhance and to project the talents of the people living in Western countries.
Yeah, you have a good and profound knowledge in the region of Caucasus. This region has always been a crossroad for different cultures and civilizations, but currently it is facing lots of economical and political challenges. So how do you see the future of this region, and what would be the role this region may play in the contradiction between West and East?
One thing the region should not do and should avoid being put in is a situation where it becomes some kind of fault line between the West and Russia and the West and Islam. The Caucasus has, as you said, always been an area which has been influenced by different cultures and different civilizations, and it will remain like that because it is what it is. It is a region where there is Christianity, there is Islam, there are other religions, and these are not going to go away. What we are looking at now is a situation where, despite the fact that the three countries in the South Caucasus, Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Georgia, have taken, in a certain sense, different trajectories towards their foreign policy orientation and towards their alliances, military and otherwise. We have Armenia, which is a member of the Collective Security Treaty Organization led by Russia. We have Georgia, that is aspiring to become a NATO country. We have Azerbaijan, that is a non-aligned country. But despite all this, there is also a common element. One common element that is emerging is actually the European Union. All the three countries are in the process of connecting themselves in different ways to the European Union. So, for example, Georgia is now an associated state, and it aspires for more. Armenia and Azerbaijan do not aspire for associate membership of the EU or for membership, but both are in the process of negotiating very deep and comprehensive agreements with the European Union. Now, this offers an opportunity because the European Union, elements of these three agreements, are going to be a good basis on which to build future regional cooperation. And I think this is how it has to be. What we don't need is some kind of situation where, because Georgia is more connected with the EU and Armenia is more connected with the Eurasia Economic Union, that some kind of wall falls in between Armenia and Georgia. And the same, we already have enough problems in the Caucasus because of the Karabakh War and other issues. Right. But I think the European Union is going to bring in an interesting common factor. And this is perhaps not properly perceived yet, but I feel that there are going to be many elements in the agreements that all the three countries are going to have with the EU that will offer a good platform for good regional cooperation in the future.
Denis, Sammut, thanks for your time and thanks for the interview.
Thank you.